Welcome to Camp Chaos, where we celebrate the wild ride of modern womanhood.
Join us as we dish on motherhood, life's ups and downs, and all things pop culture that we know you want to talk about.
With special guests and expert insights, we're here to empower you through the chaos of everyday life.
Consider this your ultimate escape from the hustle and bustle. And as always, parental guidance suggested.
Camp is now in session. All right, Miss Gina Mundy, the author of A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth. Welcome to Camp Chaos. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited to talk to you. I know I've watched some of your stuff and you guys are freaking awesome. So for me to be on your show, complete honor. So thank you for having me.
Oh, well, the honor is
We
all
love
ours.
you. Yeah,
I
the
will
honor is
say,
ours.
Though, too, last week when we were going to have you scheduled, and I know we had to cancel, my husband came downstairs and he goes, who is the attorney? I need to speak to her. I'm like, what? And my husband does not talk to any of our guests, and he deals with a lot of attorneys. So he came down to be your fan. Was that the weirdest thing ever?
We were we're talking to her next week.
Pipe down. You were going to be out of town. He's actually from Chicago. I'm like, thank God you're out of town when we are talking to her. I don't know what you want to talk to her about my childbirth about, but leave Gina alone.
I love that. That's awesome. I'm so sad he's not there.
Oh, no, I am not.
He'll come on for another episode. But Gina, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, sure. So first of all, I live in Michigan. I have 3 kids. I've been married 21 years, but I have also been an attorney specializing in childbirth cases for 21 years. And just so your audience understands what exactly is a childbirth case, these are cases involving the birth of a baby when something goes wrong and baby's not born healthy. Unfortunately, and it seems like more of these are happening lately, as babies will pass away during childbirth. And I've had very sad cases where mom has passed away during childbirth. So as the attorney, I come in, I find out what happened, what went wrong, why. But probably the most important thing is, what should have been done so baby was born healthy, mom around to, raise her baby. And those questions have taken me across the country many, many times. I've actually been to California. I don't even know how many times, just meeting with different doctors, people in the delivery team, deposing them, cross-examining them, whatever it may be. Again, just hashing out every aspect of labor and delivery. So 19 years deep into my profession, I decided to write a book. We had basically a near family tragic event during the birth of a baby. It was the first baby of our next generation. And it just kind of stopped me in my tracks, took me out of the grind. And I'm like, whoa, because I can tell you right now how I prepare my kids for childbirth. My kids are 20, 16, and I have so those are my girls. My little man's 10. But my girls, how I prepare them for childbirth will be completely different than, a traditional family. So I started to basically, after that event, think, okay, what if I'm, 1,100 miles from my kids? I need my kids to know this stuff. So I started to write everything down that I was seeing in my cases, what they needed to know, and then quickly realized, wait a minute, this is information that could help families literally across the world. So June 2023, I published the book, A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth. And here I am now. So basically, instead of getting involved in the aftermath of something going wrong, which I still am, I'm still a partner at my law firm. I'm trying to get involved beforehand just to prevent these mistakes. Because I'll tell you, the hardest part of my job all day long is the day I have to sit down with the families and go over the birth of their baby. I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm here basically trying to unemploy myself and find something else to do that's that would be other, I don't know. But yeah, so I'm here today just saying, hey, this is what you guys need to know, again, to prevent the mistakes and complications I've seen now for 21 years.
That is a beautiful statement, what you just said of I'm literally trying to unemploy myself. This is a very dark career that you've had. Can I ask just a housekeeping question as far as legally? Are you practiced in you're licensed in your state? Are you allowed to practice in other states? How you said you fly to California, or you fly to other states?
Oh, no, okay. So in these cases, they're involving the birth of a baby. And let's say a lot of it happens at teaching institutions where they have residents. So what happens is they're involved during the birth of a baby. There could be 4 to 8 residents. And then they disperse across the country, so now you're traveling to, meet with them, depose them, whatever it may be, or sit in on deposition with them. And then you have the experts that are retained in these cases. You could have 15, 20 experts retained all around the country, basically opining on what they believed happened to baby, what should have been done, or maybe how the delivery team, how everything was done correctly, but just, shit happens. So, whatever it may be. And then there's all of the different aspects. You got to realize in these cases, it's the OBGYNs that are at issue, but there's, the OBGYN, there's nursing, midwives, there's placental pathology when we try to figure out, baby's inside of mom. So it's like, okay, what was the environment before baby was born? And a lot of times if something does happen during childbirth, you can see it in the placenta. Great. Now we have placental pathologists. And then there's just so many different aspects, and then once baby's born, then you have your, the other stuff going on, the neonatologist, pediatric neurologist, people who look at baby's head, neuroradiologists. So those, it's literally every aspect of labor and delivery, but then working backwards to find out when did this happen to baby? How did this happen? And, correlating it with the care that mom and baby received during labor and delivery.
So you're kind of like solving a crime at some sense, but like in utero, you can't really go back and be like, okay, let me see exactly what that looked like. Or do you go back to the ultrasounds? Because I had vasa previa with my son. I don't know if you're familiar with that condition.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you are. And then we actually both did VBACs with our girls. So I'm sure we could have all sorts of discussions with you.
Wow.
But as far as like with my son, I know that I was a very high liability for my hospital and for my doctors. And I was hospitalized for 3 weeks prior to delivering, and then they took him at 34. But I wanted to wait, and I was like, I'm in the hospital. I'm in the safest place that I can be. I want to carry him a little bit further into term. And I had 3 doctors come in and say, we are taking this baby tomorrow. Granted, I realize now I had a lot more rights to say, no, I want to wait. But I did really trust the medical system, which, he's here and he's safe. So I'm grateful for that. But in that situation, I know I was a liability for my doctor, for the practice, for the hospital. And I have a friend that's an OBGYN, and he said, they want you to deliver to get you out of there. They want you out of their hair and have no liability.
Yeah, that happens. Were you preeclamptic or high blood pressure? Or were you dilating? Why were you in there?
Because of vasa previa.
Oh, the vasa previa was the reason they kept you in. I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Because sometimes okay. Gotcha. I'll tell you, these cases, when a baby is born not healthy, it's huge exposures to the hospital. They are, unfortunately, because, then if a baby's not born healthy, they can never work. What would have been their earning capacity? The care, when you have a very sick baby, the care is, the cost of it's astronomical. So yeah, it's hard to say, but I don't doubt that at all. So
I think this is a really unique law to practice. I also think like for us, a lot of our friends and a lot of people that I know or that we've spoken to have had traumatic births, but they don't necessarily know that there's anything that they can do about it. Like sometimes it's just, okay, I had a traumatic birth and that's just,
I need to
heal and move on. And hopefully I can, come back around the second time. I know something women are given Pitocin to help induce labor and all of that. Why is that such a big focus for you? And why are there so many things that can go wrong with Pitocin?
Right. Yeah, that's a pretty loaded question, and I love it because Pitocin, and this is so important to get out there, just so your audience understands. It's one of the reasons I wrote the book. So in my baby cases, when there's a mistake or complication, the number one most common factor issue in a baby case is the drug Pitocin. So again, when baby's not born healthy, typically I'll get a new case in. First words I read, mom's being induced with Pitocin. And then now we have a study out there, the ARRIVE study 2018, that's like, hey, mom's a good candidate, elective Pitocin induction, 39 weeks, go ahead and offer it to her. It's like, geez.
That was me.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, again, different doctors, different opinions, different ways they manage patients. So lately I've been, of course, because I'm sitting out here going on shows and I'm like, careful with Pitocin, everybody. doctors like to talk to me about Pitocin now. So I just had one doctor tell me that the standard of care, which is what doctors go by and when they manage a patient, the standard of care requires them to offer mom an elective Pitocin induction at 39 weeks if she's a good candidate.
Wait, back that up.
I'm the one that has to litigate the standard of care. That is not standard of care. So then
So wait, Gina, I have a question. When you say standard of care, like, is that by the American College of Gynecology?
standard of care. Yeah. I know once I mentioned it, every time I say standard of care on a show, people are like, hold on. And I'm like, oh boy, that's a loaded. Yeah. That's the legal part. I get on shows and I'm like medical, even though I'm not medically trained. I'm in that world, but I'm litigating it, and I'm litigating things like standard of care. So for a doctor, that's kind of how they have to practice. So standard of care is what a reasonable and prudent physician would do under same or similar circumstances. So you have, yeah. So it's really hard to say like a guideline is creates the standard of care because every patient is managed individually. Every pregnancy is different, every patient. So again, going back standard of care, what a reasonable and prudent physician would do under same or similar circumstances pertaining to that particular patient. So it's always standard of care is always tricky, but yeah, that's how they have to go by. So in these cases, for instance, baby is not born healthy and then the doctor, the big issue is going to be, did the doctor violate the standard of care? Did they act in a manner that was unreasonable that caused, injury to baby? So that's what they have to go by. So when that doctor tells me the standard of care requires him, to offer, patients who again are a good candidate for an elective Pitocin induction, which by the way, as most people, I mean, unless you have some major problems that would prevent that, basically he admitted, he's offering Pitocin inductions to almost everybody. And it's like, what? So then I had this other doctor, and I love this because I was in shock. But this other doctor is like, yeah, there are so many complications that occur with Pitocin. We are shying away from we're not offering it to patients, and we're shying away, we're counseling patients to not have a Pitocin induction. But again, okay, these are recent conversations, and look at the difference. One doctor's like, everyone offer it. Another doctor, wait a minute. You're right, Gina, because I'm an expert on a lot of these cases, and every time I review a case, again, first words are Pitocin induction. So here's the deal with Pitocin. It can be safely administered. This is a drug. I may not be a great, big fan of it, but it might be something that somebody needs to deliver baby with the only other option being a C-section. So it can be safely administered. And like the bottom line with Pitocin is like slow and steady, let it hit your sweet spot, but it mimics spontaneous labor. So here's the deal with Pitocin. So obviously baby's in your uterus, and there's every time there's a contraction, the uterus is contracting down on baby. Well, not only on baby, but on the umbilical cord and the placenta. So every time there's a contraction and the uterus squeezes baby, all the oxygen to baby stops. Nobody freak out. Babies are made to handle contractions. That's completely 100% normal. They're, though, made to handle spontaneous contractions, not artificial contractions. So when they increase the Pitocin too fast and mom starts contracting too much, that's too much stress on baby. And it can be too much stress on mom too. And then that's when think about it. And then you guys look like you work out. I mean, think about it, at the beginning of a workout, you're going, you're good, but yeah, under your workout, you're getting tired. Same thing. Again, labor is labor's not only hard on mom, but hard on baby. So, mom's lucky though, right? With the contractions, she's like, oh, epidural. She's good. No, baby doesn't have the luxury of an epidural. And so then that's when things can go sideways. And basically what ends up happening, and the story that actually stopped me in my tracks and why I wrote this book is the introduction to the book. But in the end, she did have a Pitocin induction. And in the end, basically she landed on the right side of a close call, where my cases are like people land on the wrong side of a close call with Pitocin because it's like they stress baby out, and then it's like, okay, wait, it's the response to that, and how fast can they get baby? How fast can they get, make sure baby's okay? So it's like these close calls. So again, she landed on the right side of one. My cases are landing on the wrong side of a close call, but I'm telling you, especially with Pitocin, these families are like minutes from a healthy baby. So understanding how to have a safe Pitocin induction is extremely important. Hence chapter 14 of my book, where I'm like, okay, I've traveled the country. I've done all this stuff. Again, different doctors, different opinions. I've hashed it out with doctors across the country, this drug, researched it, cross-examined, you name it, this drug. And I'm like, okay, consensus is this is how you have a safe Pitocin induction.
Gina, you're making me like feel ill. I think Taylor's sitting next to me. I'm like fidgeting because I had a year ago last week, my daughter just turned 1. My first son, we went through, he was vasa previa, and then I also had placenta accreta during that birth. Easy to fix or easy to repair without removing my uterus. But then with my second birth, my daughter, my doctor, who I will preface, like, I still love this man and like I will always respect him. And he did an incredible job in my delivery and in the surgery room. However, it was not without a lot of trauma. And I own that trauma every day. And my daughter does too. And she's going to have to. But what happened in my birth was I was 39 weeks pregnant. I really wanted a VBAC, but I was also like scared and should I, shouldn't I? At my 39-week mark, I literally the next day was like, yes, I'm okay. I'm going to go for a VBAC, but he said he wanted to induce me. So I went in for Pitocin. We were at an incredible hospital here in Newport Beach. And again, these people that took care of me in my eyes are still angels, regardless of whether there was wrongdoing or whatever happened. But I got a Pitocin, and then I went from like 5 centimeters to 10 within 30 minutes. My husband left to go get food. They said, this baby's not coming anytime soon. Go ahead. Epidural was in, and before my epidural was in, I labored a long, long time without, and my contractions were like 60 seconds apart and lasting 30 seconds. So super intense. Like I was keeled over. It was really wild. But then once that epidural came, I went from 5 to 10, I think was under 30. So I pushed the baby out under 5 minutes. I looked like a rock star. I was like, I just labored without this epidural, got the epidural at the last minute, went from a 5 to a 10. All of this being like too good to be true. Your body obviously takes a very long time in labor, and this is not natural. I love what you said of like mimicking the natural, but I know they were trying to mimic it. Things went way too fast. And after I delivered her within 5 minutes, my uterus would not clamp down, like it wouldn't contract back and harden. So we had to use a Jada tool. Are you familiar with the Jada?
Yep.
I'm sure you're familiar with everything. I should just lay down on your sofa. This is going to be very therapeutic. Long and short of it, I lost 3.5 liters of blood. So I had a complete hemorrhage. I tore in 4 different places. I went in for surgery where he was able to save my uterus, thank God. And my baby was okay and I was okay, but it was very, very traumatic and very scary. And honestly, I think if I was in other hands, if I was in another hospital, obviously if I was at a home birth, probably not having Pitocin, but all of these circumstances, I walked away. My daughter, we were able to leave that hospital in one piece, but not without a lot of trauma, that I'm still healing from. But when I read your book and was looking at that chapter of Pitocin, I'm like, okay, this is heavy. So I'm curious to know just briefly hearing my story, what you think went wrong.
So when you were contracting, did they stop the Pitocin? When you were contracting like every minute for like 30 seconds, they didn't stop it or decrease? They didn't keep increasing it, did they? Yeah, they
increased it
right there. So you can't do that. Like once you get to this, you're contracting, they should just stop or decrease it. And if they keep increasing it, so your body releases like these natural oxytocin. It's like natural oxytocin, and that's supposed to make you contract. So then you're on Pitocin, which is like synthetic oxytocin. So that's making you contract. So you're starting to go into labor. So then your body's releasing oxytocin. So you go on like Pitocin, oxytocin overdrive.
So you're overdrive and your body's like, I'm getting double. I mean, it was the most wild experience of my life laboring without that epidural. But I was texting my girlfriend and calling her, my husband was, because I could not even get a word out of like, how did you go through a natural childbirth? And she's the one that said to me, she said, this is not a natural childbirth. You are on Pitocin.
Yeah,
Like your body is in this crazy state where, and your water is now broken. So you have no barrier. But I was hanging on to the walls of like, somebody get the fucking epidural now.
yeah. I don't even know how you went that long. I've known one person who has done Pitocin with no epidural. That's it. Nobody else I know has been able to handle it. Even in the cases, I feel so bad for the moms because they'll start a Pitocin, they'll try to skip the epidural, and it's just too painful. Because those, and just again, this is what everyone has to realize. Contractions not only suck for mom, they suck for baby. So that's why it's like, if you can skip the epidural, at least you understand what your baby is going through. And it probably now you understand why, there can be some stresses on baby because think of how you're feeling. So, and obviously that was not mimicking natural spontaneous labor. But no, and that's the thing is they just keep upping it, upping it, upping it, and then just that's what happens. I mean, you're actually really lucky. And I can't believe they saved your uterus.
Like he took such good care of me in that operating room. I had 3 OBs down there fixing situations. And I kept saying, I was awake. I said, am I okay? Am I okay? And he would just keep tapping my leg, like letting me know, like, I hear you, but I can't tell you you're okay. And then as soon as I saw him take off his, gown from surgery, I like passed out from, I think, just shock of, but it was like my body was saying, it's okay, you're done with this. But yeah, it was super fucking traumatic if I'm putting it lightly.
Wow. And I'll tell you, especially since I've been out for the past year or so now doing these shows and talking to people from Pitocin, there are so many people who've experienced like a birth trauma. Now everybody leaves healthy, but the mental impact of it, I've been on a lot of shows where moms, they experience the trauma from the Pitocin, really, 'cause that's where it stems, because it gives you this, way not natural experience. And it's like they carry it. And these moms have actually started shows just like, hey, just so you know, this is what this drug did to me. Don't let it do it to you. And, just trying to get like the word out there. So yeah, I mean, you are very lucky that yes, you walked away healthy, baby's healthy in the end, but there's still that trauma that you have to carry, with you. And it 100% stems from that Pitocin induction. And I know you don't want to hear this, and how it was administered, because that once you're contracting, okay, there's whoa on the pit. Did they break your bag of water or did it break naturally?
No, they broke my bag of water. And then I had a second bag that they had to come back and break, which I think is also rare. But I think I was up to like a 16 pit.
I was going to ask.
And then I think, which was, I don't know if that's high, but I mean, again, it all happened the way it was supposed to. And it's my trauma that I will carry and heal from. I have to say, doing a podcast and talking to moms and talking to people like yourself is so healing. Like when she asked me, do you want to do a podcast? I'm like, I am not sharing any of my life. Like, no way. And like, this is so much more for me than just, talking to moms and having a podcast. This is like a healing journey for me because you're absolutely right. Like we walked out of there. I have the most beautiful pictures from in the hospital, the flower arrangements for days, but it's like you cut back all the shit. And there is a broken mom and a baby that just went through so much that I need to deal with and I need to process and I need to heal from.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and your pit 16's high. So 6. So if you just read even like literally the drug insert from the manufacturer of Pitocin, 6. So and let's back up. So just so your audience understands, like it's really easy to understand how Pitocin is administered. They start at 1. They can either go up by 1 or they can go up by 2. Obviously, given what I do, I like to go up by 1. And then make sure that you see, okay, how's the body responding to it before, you increase it. But literally go 1, so 2, 3, or in some doctors or cases, they'll do 2, 4, 6, 8.
Gina, I was the one that went up by 2. And I know this because before I even had children, I was thinking, do I want to do a home birth? Do I want to do a natural birth? Like, I really like to educate myself on like what is happening and be a partner within my medical team. Like, I really truly believe that you have to be an advocate for yourself. So everything I was asking, like, okay, now what are we doing now? What are we doing now? We're going up by 2. We're going up by 2. And then I ended up, which I don't know if this is important, to get my uterus to try to contract down. They gave me a pit bolus, which you can explain what that is, but I believe it's when they let the Pitocin just flow through you to try to get your body to contract up. And I think that made it worse for me as well. Poor Taylor's sitting in my therapy session. Taylor's just in my therapy with Gina.
That's a lot. And that's why you were in like pain. That's why you were contracting every minute. So here's the deal. 6. So again, we just went through it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. That is the amount that should equal spontaneous labor, spontaneous contractions. That is what the manufacturer says is like that's your magic number. Then they say no reason to go above 9 or 10, except in very, very rare circumstances. So it sounds like you did not need to go past 9 or 10. So in my book, for instance, so every doctor does an order. And typically they'll order Pitocin up to 20. And then they'll say, how do you want it? 1, 2, 3, or 2, 4, 6. And it's into every doctor, they have their certain preferences. So what I say in my book is I'm like magic number 10, basically. And here's the deal. You can probably, I don't know how involved your doctor was or if he was picking up a shift at the hospital. Doctors order it. The nurses carry it out. So, it's really the nurse running the show. And if there's an issue, they're going to call the doctor. That's typically, how it goes.
Yeah. How it went for me, my nurse was the one recommending, but every time it was increased, she had to call the doctor and get the okay that we're going to increase her to this. She's looking good. Baby's looking good. I mean, I was so aware and so involved in all of it. And again, like I have so much respect for these people that like they have my life in their hands. They have my baby's life in their hands. They had my mom in that room, my husband in that room, and my sister in that room. I mean, I think there was trauma on them as well. I don't know how these labor and delivery nurses and these OBGYNs witness some of the things that they do. Like how I'm sure you've seen some horrific cases where they have to tell the husband or the grandmother, like, your baby didn't make it, or the mom didn't make it.
Your wife's gone.
So I think I take that and I'm like, I just got out of jail free and I feel lucky that I was able to walk away.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you've had a lot of cases that are not that way.
No, I've had one dad, he went down to get food. He left his wife, like, I'll be right back. Came back. He's like, they're sweeping the floors. He's like, where's my wife? Oh, yeah, she didn't make it. Like, what? Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely nuts. So yeah, you're very lucky. And by the way, so 16 with a VBAC, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I would have died. Like I would have been, if I was anywhere near your labor, I would have been jumping up and down. Like, no, that is insane. And considering it's a VBAC, also up by 1. Like, I don't know. You did get a out of jail free card. I'm not. You're like a case.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip nail day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever.
As moms, therapy is helpful for learning coping skills and setting boundaries so we can show up for our little ones as the best version of ourselves. It isn't just for those who've experienced major traumas.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge.
Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/campchaos today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/campchaos. Well, this will be healing talking to you as well. Taylor also had a VBAC 3 weeks, 4 weeks after, which I didn't tell her anything that happened to me other than the fact of like spontaneous labor is better than induction, which her doctor was not going to let her get induced. And
Yeah, I was going to say, I think what's really hard is for moms to find their voice in this whole like birth plan thing. And you rely so heavily on your OBGYNs. My OB was only going to allow me to do or attempt the VBAC if I went into labor naturally. She said, I will not induce you. I will not give you any Pitocin. And she said, even if I do labor and I'm stopped at any said number, if I'm stopped at 7 centimeters, 8 centimeters for longer than 4 hours, we are going to have a C-section because there's no need for me to have double trauma. So I was very lucky that my water broke naturally and I progressed with 0 Pitocin to 10 centimeters. Of course, I got an epidural. But I think I feel like Pitocin is so commonly used. And I think even for me, like before I got pregnant with my son and I thought that I could have him vaginally, I had a C-section because he was breech. I kind of heard Pitocin thrown around as like, oh, well, nobody wants to be pregnant longer than 40 weeks. So you just go ask your doctor for an induction.
common.
And I think we're not educated enough on the world of Pitocin. So how should moms go about creating a birth plan or like creating birth choices where, yes, if Pitocin is necessary, but like avoiding it at all costs kind of thing? I feel like we don't know enough about this world. We just kind of go based on what our OBs say.
Yeah, well, definitely create. Okay, actually, I'm just going to back up 1 second. Okay, your stories are so incredibly different. This is what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Okay, doctors are all over the board when it comes to Pitocin. The only thing that they do agree on is it can be safely administered during pregnancy, but that's it. So, like I hope your audience appreciates what I'm trying to say, because your two stories, one doctor who's like pit, very, very lucky, Kendra. Other doctor, spontaneous vaginal birth, and if you stall out, C-section. Okay, Taylor, as a childbirth attorney, I would take Taylor's doctor. So, but this is why it's important to pick your doctor. Your doctor is ultimately responsible for bringing your baby safely into this world. In my childbirth cases, it is their care that is at issue and analyzed more than any other aspect of the case. So yes, like it is so incredibly important that you find a really good doctor. Now, I'm more conservative, obviously, because of what I've seen. But between Taylor's doctor and Kendra's doctor, no, Taylor, your doctor all day long, that's who would be delivering my grandkids. All right, back to your question. So, birth plan. Okay, chapter 6, I do recommend everybody do a birth plan. Listen, I'm different though. I'm the childbirth attorney. It's not so much about what's in the plan because it's very hard to plan for childbirth. It's the act of preparing the plan. It's getting ready. So one of those things that every single mom should entertain is the drug Pitocin. And here's why. The introduction to my book now, again, that near family tragic event, my niece went in and it's my sister's daughter. We're tight. It's like my daughter going in. I'm 1,100 miles away from her that day. She goes in, baby's not doing okay. Baby's not doing good, but she's not in labor. So she has two choices, C-section or Pitocin induction. And, she did not realize or know anything about induction. Luckily, they have me on the other line, like, okay, I want it at 1. I want to know when it goes up. I want to see shots of the baby's heart rate every time. I want to see contractions. I'm okay, like watching everything, walking them through this, and whatnot. But it's important that, it's almost like in the birth plan, it's like, if I choose Pitocin, this is how and then if you read my book, again, I'm going to be up by 1. I'd like, at 6, like to know, do not go past 10. We talked about this a minute ago. Most doctors' orders go to 20. Crazy. And then sometimes doctors will go to 30. Insane. But I say, hey, stop at 10. So a doctor's order should only go to 10. And what that does is that if they want to go above that, everybody is going to stop in their tracks and they're going to check out mom's labor. What's going on? How's mom? How's baby? How are the contractions? They're going to reassess everything because for the doctor to do a new order or, for another 10 is, that's a big step. So they're going to stop, evaluate everything. So I'm like, okay, 10. But the best thing to do is then go to your doctor and while you're doing the birth plan and say, what is your typical order for Pitocin? Do you go up by 1? Do you go up by 2? Do you have a max? I mean, are you slow and steady? Are you, go, go, go? Like what's your approach? Because again, every single doctor and how they administer Pitocin is different. I do like, okay, at least your doctor was like, okay, before you increase it, I want to know. I do like that. And I bet you they could review the baby's heart rate remotely. And they probably were checking, okay, let me check on baby
Yeah.
and whatnot.
It was all on his phone or his iPad. He had something and he was on speaker of saying like, yeah, you could go like, I mean, he was very, very involved. And again, I think my circumstances, I maybe should have been a C-section anyways, but I don't want to dishonor what happened in that room because it was still something that was so beautiful. But at the same time, I think maybe me being more aware of like what Pitocin was. Can I ask you this, Gina? Because I feel like it's so interesting when we go to an OBGYN, so often we're waiting 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. Your appointment's getting canceled because there's an emergency. And I've been that emergency, so I can fully understand that. But when you do get your doctor, you don't feel like you have any voice, similar to how Taylor was saying, of any authority in there, much less to interview them of like, well, what's your Pitocin practice and how do you like, what is your tips for these women?
Interesting. So again, I think different doctors, some doctors are going to spend more time with you than other doctors. So you have to have like your warm, fuzzy feeling with your doctor. I write a chapter on how to pick a good doctor. It really, it comes down to even like stuff like communication. Because listen, here's the deal with the doctor. If they're not giving you the time of day, then be careful because they may not be giving your delivery team the time of day. And those are the people at your bedside. So, communication and stuff like that. But I get what you're saying, like being intimidated. I was that younger mom. My oldest is 20 years old right now. So I don't want to age myself too much. I've, obviously been an attorney for 21 years. So, yes, and I'm an advocate by nature and whatnot. So I'm a little bit, and I'm in the, childbirth case world. But, for other moms that are newer or whatnot, it's hard. But, one of the biggest things that you can do is educate yourself about childbirth and get ready for it. So you can have those really good discussions with your doctor. Because listen, if you just walk in with your birth plan to your doctor and you're like, okay, I'm going to entertain Pitocin. Like, what do you do for Pitocin? They might be like, okay, maybe short or whatever. But if you're like, hi, I've been researching Pitocin. I've read this book. It's the most common issue, in fact, in a legal baby case. I want to make sure my Pitocin's good. Almost like tell your doctor, like, I want my Pitocin to go up by 1. Are you cool with that, or do you have to do 2? I want to know every time it goes up, and then ask questions like that are in my book, like. If it's a Pitocin induction, some hospitals are one-on-one care with the nurses, like one nurse, one patient, Pitocin. Some hospitals, not kidding you, have 2 patients on Pitocin, which a nurse will have 2 patients on Pitocin, which blows my mind. But, educating yourself and being able to have a discussion with them. Listen, I am not a medically trained person. Obviously, I'm in this medical world, but, so everything that I believe is important about childbirth, the lessons from the baby cases, chapter 1, chapter 2, all the foundational things that I think it's important for parents to know and understand. But, if you read something like that and you understand what you're walking into, the importance of the, umbilical cord, the placenta, whatever it may be, I think your doctor is going to be more apt to like listen to you, have a conversation with you, versus if you're just asking these open-ended questions like, how do you run a Pitocin induction? Or no, this is what I'm thinking. I read this book, bring the book, doctors are obviously getting out there. A lot of them know about my book now. Same thing, the labor and delivery nurses like love my book because, and you know what their thing is with me? They're like, if every patient knew this before they walked in the door, then I don't have to sit bedside and teach them everything. And again, you're going to make better decisions, but it's going to give you, you're going to have better communication with your doctor. If your doctor has to start at square one and explain everything to you, yeah, they're going to be irritated. I'd be irritated. I mean, that's, I shouldn't say whatever. Obviously, if you have a condition, like the Accreta or, something wrong with your placenta, yes. But in normal situations, if you can have more of a discussion than them like explaining everything from, I just think that is so incredibly important. It's going to streamline communication. And then also you're going to understand what your doctor is saying from square one, and they'll just be able to pick, tell you the important things, not explain everything, from square one, because So I think getting ready for childbirth and educating yourself is huge.
Well, there's this crazy sense of responsibility, and I feel like it's your first test of motherhood. Like, you get pregnant, it is your responsibility to take care of yourself and your baby and educate yourself along the way. I think so many of the books and like the information out there has been so dated or just scratching the surface, but not really wanting to talk about the risks and actually what the best thing is for you, for the baby. So obviously, the world needs your book, Gina. So thank you for that. Can we talk about briefly just, I feel like in the United States, we have really bad outcomes for mother baby. Can you talk about how the United States compares to other developed countries?
Yeah, it's a disaster. I mean, I don't know. I like literally, it's a freaking disaster.
But why?
I
But
don't
like,
know
I guess
why, because our
why?
care is so advanced that,
It's
yes,
scary.
listen, here's the deal. A lot of people are like, why did you not write this to doctors, nurses? Why didn't you write this to the medical community? And I'm like, no. Because I do believe that to solve this problem, it is a problem. We have our rates are worse than, a lot of most other countries. And it's really sad. But I think the answer does not lie in our healthcare system. It lies with the families understanding what they're walking into. Moms understanding, like, listen, you're the decision maker, not your doctor, not your delivery team. They are your medical advisors. You make the decisions. And how do you make good decisions? You get ready for something. It's like anything in life. If you know about something, you understand something, you're going to make better decisions rather than rolling up, and hoping for the best. But yeah, no, that's another reason that, families really do need to take that time and prepare and understand. It's, again, it's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I do know that that answer lies in definitely in the hands of the families. Many of the families, when I sit down with them, they understand so much more about what went wrong, what happened, that I know that if they, especially like the dads, if they would have known this before, they would never have to sit down and meet someone like me.
I think that's huge. I just to understand the whole picture, I'm curious to know when you're in these malpractice childbirth cases and say it is like an OB who prescribed too much Pitocin too quickly or whatever it is, what is their argument? Like, how are they trying to say that this was the right standard of care? Is that like, because listening to your perspective, it seems like why wouldn't all doctors just go up by one and go slowly and stop at a certain level? Like, what is their theory behind doing this up to a certain number and increasing it very quickly?
So, for instance, like Pitocin. So usually in the cases, when you look back at everything, it's like, oh yeah, you can say this should have been done different or whatever. But even prospectively managing somebody like with Pitocin.
Yeah, like what's their argument?
Defense?
Yeah, what's their defense in these cases of like, because hearing you talk about it, it's like, I don't know why now they would do this or think that that's right or the right standard of care. So when you're,
like, what's their argument?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, Pitocin is a very individualized drug. So that means how somebody may respond to it may be completely different than how somebody else may respond to it. So basically, that's really it. It's just very individualized, which is, again, why you go slow and steady, because unless you've been on it before, you have no idea how your body's going to react.
So wait, Gina, you're saying basically they put the blame on the way that the mother reacted to it.
Well, her way her body responds is, everybody's different. So prospectively managing the patient or the mom at that time, it seemed like everything was fine and that she did need more Pitocin. So, but I'll tell you, I mean, all of the cases, are very individualized on exactly what happened or, whatnot, or how it went wrong or when it went wrong. It's just that Pitocin is typically involved. So, or they may say, well, mom wasn't contracting, enough. So we just kept increasing the Pitocin. That's common. A very common one was that even though mom was contracting enough, the baby's heart rate was fine. So then they kept increasing the Pitocin. Now it seems like the last 5 years are shying away from that. But yeah, I mean, it just depends on the case and what they're, what the defense is. It's all different, and again, I'll have a case and I'll have to retain expert witnesses. They're OBGYN doctors who come in and they'll look at the care of a patient. They'll look at the medical records and they'll tell me, is this good care or bad care? And it'll be, concerning Pitocin. And I'll have one doctor tell me that basically everything was done wrong. The Pitocin administration was awful. They blew the baby out of the uterus. This should never have happened. Baby should have been born healthy. The next doctor, then again, experts, sometimes from the same hospital, which always blows my mind. So that's one doctor's opinion on a case. Everything's done bad. Another doctor will then come in and say, an expert, again, looking at the medical record, saying everything was done correctly. It was correct Pitocin administration. This is exactly what I would have done. Just unfortunately, there are risks. This is one of the risks. And I'll tell you, and that's another thing too, is, if you look at the drug insert or whatever, they're supposed to go over the risks of Pitocin, like, informed consent. We're informing you of the risks and you're consenting. But anyway, so the second doctor will come in and say, yep, everything was done perfect. So, it's such a crazy world right now with these doctors and Pitocin. It still blows my mind. Even like we were talking about at the beginning of the show with, the different opinions of the doctors. So typically, the doctors will be like, it's just, everything happened. In hindsight, yes, they may have done something differently, but prospectively managing the patient, everything was fine.
Gina, I don't blame you for going to write a book because I don't know how you do what you do. I could not imagine having to sit down with these families and talk about the situation. I feel emotionally charged just talking to you about my happy ending story. I can't imagine what you do. So thank you for writing this book for moms so that it's hopefully putting you out of business and your counterparts that are in this form of legal work. But it's just tragic and awful. And, as moms, I think it's so important that we are advocates for ourselves and even more so our babies.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And thank you for having me on and all that stuff too, because I do this is my time to kind of get out and talk about it. But yeah, no, I really hope that it's, information that families read, that they use. There's so many different parts of that, the book, but also, just even going. So chapter 1 of that book, by the way, I keep it up on my website and literally it's downloadable, shareable, like free, all that stuff. But it's the lessons from the baby cases. So I know at least if families have that information, and remember, as a lesson, we can learn from the past to prevent it from happening in the future. That's definitely a really good resource for families, just so you have an idea of, okay, these are the different aspects of labor and delivery that I need to know about. I need to, study. And then also I started a podcast called the Childbirth Attorney Podcast with Gina Mundy. And I just did like a big thing to dads. I'm like, listen, dads, you're part of the answer in having a healthy baby. This is what you need to know. Boom, boom, boom. It's like a half hour, but just again, getting that information out there. And again, once families have it, they can make those good decisions because like chapter 11 of my book, the most common issues and facts, common facts in a baby case. So if families understand what that is, like even, how they broke your bag of water. So it's really important for families to understand that one, baby is like doing great, everything's like normal. Once they break the bag of water, that's kind of when the baby can be more vulnerable to something happening because their environment changes. They're in the uterus, umbilical cord, placenta, water drains out. Now their environment has changed. But so most mistakes, complications, or when something goes wrong is after mom's water breaks. Making that decision actually incredibly important. Again, I know that as a birth trauma, childbirth attorney, but a lot of other people. So anyway, so that's another example of what's in chapter 11. But if you know this information, it helps to give families too, like a heightened sense of awareness, activate their intuition, and all that stuff.
I love what you said about the dads because I think so many of my friends hire doulas to be in the room of like, somebody's got to be calm and make the right decisions for me and make sure that, there's less medical intervention, whatever the birth plan is. But there is a responsibility on the dads, and they need to kind of like step up and be like, I feel like my husband was the one that's like, where am I going to stand? Is there going to be blood? Jokes on him. There was a fuck ton of blood. But it's like, they have all of this scare of like, oh, they're so worried of watching what's going to happen. It's like, you need to man up. You need to be a responsible party in that room and make sure that your wife and your baby are taken care of.
Oh my goodness.
We need a doula, dads.
You literally
we
just hit it like on the nose. Like absolutely. They can play such an important role in protect. And listen, they work so hard on the nursery. They're getting that. They're putting everything together. The last step, the grand finale is now just protecting wife, protecting baby. And I get it. Until now, there has been no book that will help guide the dads. But my book would be like, it's like literally like, this is what you need to know to make sure your wife and your baby comes home safely after birth.
Well, and I think that's huge because normally, getting ready for birth, books are like how to breathe and, how you want the room set up. You don't think about medical decisions. So your book, your website, all of these things are great resources because I think the lesson here is that like we just need to educate ourselves as moms on the entire situation, what can happen, what we feel comfortable with. And that way we feel empowered to go into our births, the right way. Before we go, can you just share with everyone like your website, the title of your book and everything so that they can find you?
Oh, sure. So at any point, anything about having a safer childbirth is always on my website, GinaMundy.com, GINAMUNDY.com. That'll have like all my episodes, my, childbirth podcast. Cause there are stuff like doulas. I love doulas. Doulas are not in my baby cases. So doulas definitely help to prevent these mistakes and complications. So I'm a huge fan of doulas, but like I just had an episode where, there was the bad doula. Like you do not want the bad doula. She's going to ruin your experience. So I'm like, okay, this is how you pick a good doula because I am a huge fan of doulas and I do recommend families get them. But anyway, so on my website, you'll see like all that information. And then I like blog on some stuff again, with just the intention on this is how you have a safe childbirth. The name of my book is A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth, How the Power of Knowledge Can Help You Deliver a Healthy Baby. And the best way to find that right now is Amazon. You can even throw Gina Mundy in the search bar and it should pop up. But no, the book, I'm like so ecstatic because they've even had the healthcare workers are now like weighing in. But no, it carries 4.9 stars, and I think it has like 600 and almost 50 reviews. So it's definitely helped. People seem to be liking it, so that's good. Because I can be very direct sometimes when I speak. So it's like,
oh, we like it. So can we, clearly.
yes, which I like.
Thank you so much, Gina. This was amazing, and I feel like our listeners are so lucky to be able to hear from you.
Oh, you guys are awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
Gina.
you.
Thanks for tuning in to Camp Chaos. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Connect with us on social media at Camp Chaos Podcast. Until next time, campers.